Greetings to the viewers. I'm your host Uday Arya and welcome to yet another session of Sahitya Sarovar. This session is very special for me for what I was looking forward from a long time, a tribute to His Grace Dr. Paulos Gregorios. Today it is a conversation to understand the life of a distinguished disciple of Dr. Paulos Gregorios, Dr. Father Kim George, and we will be discussing his life and the influences of Dr. Paulos Gregorios on his life. I would invite him. Good evening, Father.
Good evening. Good evening, Uday.
Thank you so much for joining and agreeing for this conversation. We would begin it, uh, this conversation now. And my first question would be about the memories that are associated with your childhood. We know you as a theologian, as a thinker, as a writer, but I want to see you as a student because I am also a student. So it is always I am eager to know whomsoever I am in conversation, how's their student life was there, the memories that were associated to your childhood.
Hmm. Thank you, Uday. Well, I don't think I had an eventful childhood. No, I was just like many other children living in a countryside of Kerala. But my earliest memories are about my mother and also the nature around our house. Um, I think even now, these are very strong memories in my mind. Of course, every child is attached to his or her mother. Even when I was a little grown up in school, when I come back from school, if I don't see my mother immediately in the house, I'll be very much anxious and I will even cry. And nature in the same way, of course, we call it Mother Nature. That's very, very important. Very consoling, soothing mother for me. And I remember, even at the age of 5, we, in our property around the house, there was a little stream running, and I was very much fascinated by that stream. So I used to go to take water and take bath, etc., in that stream. Um, in good summer, it dries up, of course, and also behind the house we had a extensive rice field, paddy field, and there was a river, a small river, and beyond the river, in the horizon, you had a hillock, a beautiful hillock. So every evening, as a child, when I look to the western side, I see the sun descending behind the hillock. And one of the puzzles in my mind at that time is that where does the sun go? It just disappears. And I never asked that question to anybody, but it remained in my. I was surprised. I was puzzled about where it goes, and I thought I should go there sometime. Only when I was in the high school, I could go there with my friends, who joined me, and then I discovered. Of course, by that time I had learned that the sun sets, etc. But I learned that there was still a valley behind that hillock, and the sun was far away. The horizon was further receding. But these two or three images in my mind are very, very, very powerful. I still keep the idea of Mother Nature as a very comfortable place for me. So that's my earliest memories of my childhood. I don't know whether you want me to speak more about it food, etc.
Yes. So now, moving to, because they are just fabulous memories of your childhood,
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
I would now ask you about your relationship, how you gradually found Dr. Paulos Marigorios as your mentor, because you said he was your mentor, a spiritual father for more than 3 decades. So how's this relationship started and all that?
Yes. Well, I met Father Paulos Mar Gregorios, Bishop Paulos Gregorios, only when I was 20 years old. I passed the high school. I went to college, and I was in a hostel in two colleges, and I finished my degree, first degree in chemistry, and then I joined the theological seminary to study theology. There, in the first year, Father Paul Vergis, that was the first former name of Paulos Mar Gregorios before he became a bishop. Well, he came from Geneva as the principal of the seminary in my first year. So that was my first meeting with him. Well, he had no classes for us first year students. So in the chapel, when we meet for evening and morning worship, every week he would give us a little Bible study or, or, or a talk. That was amazing for me because I came from college and I had met many professors in colleges, in two colleges where I studied. But here I found a man who was amazing, great clarity of thought and expression. In fact, I was in a way bewitched by his words and the profundity of his thoughts. It opened a great universe for me, I would say. Well, in the college, I had read a lot of things. My interest was primarily in science, in chemistry, but eventually I moved over to philosophy, literature, and theology. So, um, meeting Father Paul Vergis or Paulos Margregorios was a turning point in my life. Um, I would like to say that I came to the seminary with a confused mind because as I was completing my degree in college, CMS College Kottayam, um, I think I became very confused about my orientation, about my future. I was looking for a meaning. I think I had lost meaning to a great extent, and I was looking for a meaning, a foothold for my existence. So it is at that time that I met Father Paul Vergis, whose words and whose vision gave me a foothold and gave me a new meaning. I must say this. So I'm very grateful to him for that experience, grateful to God for guiding me to a guru.
Yes. Talking more on your relationship with Dr. Paulos Marigorios, can you share some of the memoirs with him that are still as fresh as in your memory?
Yes, when Paul Verghese came to Kottayam, he immediately made a mark on the cultural, intellectual scene of Kerala because he knew Western philosophy very well. He could teach in a wonderful way. So he was invited by Kerala University to give lectures in philosophy. And he was also made a member of the university senate. And once he was returning from Trivandrum to Kottayam by car, well, he had an accident. He hit a Kerala transport bus, and it was a very serious accident. He broke his right leg, and he had other injuries also. So at that time, of course, it was the pre-computer time. He used to write on paper his articles, and the typist in his office, the secretary would type it, and then they would cyclostyle it. He used to attend various conferences in different parts of the world on many topics. So he used to write and travel very often. But when he broke his right leg, that is a great handicap for him. He was very frustrated that he cannot sit and write. He also broke his ribs, very painful. And then he was looking for a scribe. He would give the dictation and to write down. And then some of the teachers in the seminary apparently suggested my name, um, because I came from college, and apparently they thought that I could write good English, etc. And then I was sent to his room, and I was really terrified because he was a great man, well known in many parts of the world, a great intellectual. How can I be a scribe to him? And he asked me to take a few sheets of white paper, and told me that he would dictate, but during his dictation, I should not ask any question to disturb him. What did you say, or how can things like that. So I started writing. I think the first article he wrote, I mean, the first I wrote by dictation was on Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse was a well-known leftist intellectual in Europe in the late 60s and 70s during the cultural revolution of the student revolution in Europe. I never heard that name before, so he gave me the spelling of that name, Herbert Marcuse, and I started writing. Um, I think I wrote with the shivering hands. After 2 or 3 pages, he asked me to show him what I wrote. He read it, and he said, "Excellent, no mistake," which is a great, uh, you know, boosting for me. And well, I got a certificate from a great man that gave me some self confidence. And since that time, until he became completely okay with his right hand, I used to be his scribe. While attending my classes, after the classes, he would ask me to go and write. So I went through a lot of ideas and names which I didn't know before. And he would also give me books to read. He had a big collection of books, you see. Now, this is, I just narrated it because it is one occasion which came to me by accident, in both senses, his accident and also the accident. Um, so that's how I became a sort of a real disciple, and he allowed me to be a disciple. And since then, he would ask me to. He used me as a sounding board also. When he goes to a big conference, to have great clarity before writing down, he would spell out his ideas, and then he needed somebody to listen to him and also raise occasional questions. So that's how he introduced me to the world of letters, I would say.
Yes, sir. You were very much close to Dr. Paulos Gregorios, his ideas, but after his death, you were not agreed to write and publish anything substantial about his writings. Even your friends were prompting you. What was the reason behind that? And after that, what changed your perspective when you started writing on his ideals and him?
Yes, you are right, Uday. When he died in 1996, I was not in Kerala or India. I was away in Brazil, in the city of Salvador, where I was supposed to be attending an international meeting and also give a little speech there. So I heard the news of his demise while I was there. It was a big shock for me. And so I immediately I made preparation to return to Kerala. But by the time I arrived, um, he was his funeral was over. Then I was literally under a shock because his physical absence and his absence of his words, was created a big emptiness in my mind. I didn't know what to do, and of course, at that time, the people who lived had heard him, knew him, so there was no point in my interpreting or reinterpreting what he said. People knew him. At the university in Mahatma Gandhi University, Kerala University, in church circles, in intellectual circles, they all knew him very well. So I thought I wouldn't do anything. And I also felt that I was incompetent to interpret or present the ideas of a great man like my teacher. So I was, in a way, kept silent for a long time. You're true. And then, now it is almost 25 or more than 25 years. So now it is a time to write about him, to disseminate his ideas, because the new generation doesn't know him very well. So this is my answer for your question. Yes.
Yes, sir. The idols of talking about the new generation, the new people, the ideas of Dr. Paulos Marigolios are somewhat complex. What do you feel if I could show you the book The Cosmic Man is one such example for this? And so what you can suggest the ways or you see the ways that can his complex idols can be understood by the people and it can be propagated to many.
Um, yes, in a way, people who are totally alien to his thought world, it can be a bit complex. But I think he was one of those rare people in the world who can interpret, who can express an idea very clearly. You know. So wherever he spoke, international fora in India, in theological institutions, in universities, I think he was sought after as a great speaker and interpreter. So I don't think someone who wants to study his writings, it won't be very complex. You can enter from different angles into his thought. He himself, particularly in theology, he himself took Saint Gregory of Nyssa, a 4th century philosopher and theologian of the Eastern Church, as his guru. So he studied his writings in Greek, and he translated a little bit of that. He wrote his dissertation on the thought world of Saint Gregory of Nyssa, God, world, man relationship. Um, that was an amazing discovery he made for all of us, because we knew him as a saint, as a father of the church, but very few people knew him as a philosopher and intellectual who had a very powerful uh, system of relating God with God's creation and with humanity. So, Paulos Gregorios, in fact, brought to us that great gift. So he added to that his own reflections. So you see, so together, that was a great learning for many of us. So I would suggest, well, p- probably the newcomers or the new learners cannot just go into the Cosmic Man, the book you showed. That is PhD dissertation. But there are other books, like, for example, Freedom of Man, or Enlightenment, East and West. These are some of the things any intelligent reader can understand. Yes. Hmm.
Yes, you have edited a lot of books, and you have gained a lot of things by Dr. Paulos Gregorios. And talking on your life, on your artistic uh, way, you are a poet and an artist too. What what is the reason for your attraction towards the expression and arts, the world of expression and arts?
Yes, Uday, but before coming to that question, let me also add a few more words about Paulos Gregorios.
Yes, sir.
In
Sure, sure.
Mahatma Gandhi University in Kottayam, they have instituted a chair in his name, Dr. Paulos Gregorios Chair, and the first incumbent was the well-known scientist, mathematician, physicist, and philosopher E.C.G. Sudarshan. He, some years ago, he died. He's also from Kerala. He was a well-known theoretical physicist, and his name went up for Nobel Prize several times. And he used to be an admirer of Paulos Gregorius. He was the first incumbent, and he passed away. And the university asked me to take over the responsibility of the chair. We do a lot of things like organizing seminars, exchanges, etc. One thing is that we can take up any subject which is of interest to Paulos Gregorius. Well, that means in almost all subjects. He was interested in the philosophy of science, in Advaita, in Buddhism, in Christian theology, intercultural encounters. So he can take any subject in an interdisciplinary, holistic way. Uh, for example, in this book, Paulos Gregorius, a reader, I have tried to bring together his passages from his writings, some 25, more than 25 books, with introduction and notes. So, someone who wants to have a look at his writings, probably this is a simple way of approaching it. I don't take the whole things together, but selected passages with introduction and notes. So, Paulos Gregorios, this was first published by Fortress Press in the USA, and then we have an Indian edition, which is cheaper, published here in Nagpur and Delhi. Then, very recently, this book is brought out by the Mahatma Gandhi University and the chair, Paulos Gregorius chair. This is Philosophy and the Quest for Meaning, glimpses of philosophical and cultural inquiry, classical and contemporary, Western and Eastern. It's also very interesting, a collection of philosophical articles. I think any intelligent reader can enjoy that book. The present secretary of Indian Philosophical Congress has written about it, and also the present vice chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi University, Dr. Sabu Thomas, has written about it. Um, Paulos Gregorius was a general president of the Indian Philosophy Congress for some time. So these are the two recent books which came out about his thoughts, uh, his main writings. And of course, his theological writings are in mainly in English and in Malayalam, and also in other languages like German and French. Okay, so shall we? Um,
Yes.
you raised a question regarding my own artistic
Sure.
inclination, etc. Well, I think artistic affinity, inclination is something inborn in human beings. Huh? Well, you can be inspired by the circumstances or by great artists, but this is something uh, congenital. Huh? I think every human being is an artist. Only thing is that we simply don't recognize it. In my case, I was a student in Paris, and then that city, was a center of art, uh, particularly in the Western world. So to be there, you are exposed to many museums, galleries, and artists. So that was a great source of inspiration for me. But by the time I had done my own little drawings and paintings, but in a very secretive way. I didn't show it to many people except to a few friends. But now, as I get older and older, I think I am more and more drawn to the world of art. I think art is the best way to understand theology. Art is the right way to understand the reality of creation. Art is the best way to get some very faint ideas about God.
Yes, sir. Seeing the contemporary world, as Dr. Paulos Gregorios believed in the peace for humanity, interfaith dialogue. How
Mhm.
do you relevant do you see these idols in the contemporary world, in the world where there is wars, heart rate?
Can you repeat the question, Uday?
I was saying, sir, that in the contemporary world, then we can see the examples of wars and heart rate, how
Mhm.
important the idols of Dr. Paulos Gregorios is. He believed in peace and interfaith dialogues.
Yes, yes. Paulos Mar Gregorios was a man of commitment. I found in him this passionate self dedication to the cause of peace, of unity, of reconciliation between peoples and nations. Um, I remember he was involved in many political uh, events from the side of peace and unity. For example, he lived at the time of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the American capitalist system. So he was, in a way, very much attuned to the socialist system. He was not a communist, but he definitely upheld the socialist principle of equality and sharing. He himself lived a rather simple life, I would say. I never saw him indulging in any luxury. He was very critical of the Western world, the consumerist world, and the market economy, because he said that deprives many people of their human dignity. He was equally opposed to the misuse of socialist ideology in the Soviet bloc. But the principle of socialism as an ideal was very important for him. For the freedom of the human person, the dignity of humanity, and the possibility for a community of persons living together across their religious and ideological persuasions to create a real human community. That was his ideal. And he organized many meetings, cultural and interfaith encounters in Delhi and in other places. And he was invited to be the speaker at the World Parliament of Religions in 1993. You know, that was the 100th anniversary of the famous Parliament of Religions, in which our Swami Vivekananda made a speech, and he became a great hero in the Western world, a spiritual hero in the Western world. So the same conference after 100 years, and Paulos Gregorios was a main speaker there. He was already very sick, but still he attended that meeting and gave the lecture. I still remember a sentence. He said, it's not one religion for all humanity, but one humanity for all religions." That was a key idea to which he was very faithful. He believed in the diversity of cultures, religions, and intellectual systems, but humanity is one. The object of all these systems and religions is one humanity. How to uphold the human dignity and how to bring together people of various nations and faith systems, that was his major concern, which was an inspiring thing for me and for my generation.
Yes, sir. Talking on you as collectively, how do you see your life? Collectively, with the memories of Dr. Paulos Marigorios, his influences as a thinker, as an artist, collectively now, how do you see your life? And what memories do you remember when you see back to the past?
Hmm. Um, After the passing away of Gregorios, some of his friends organized a meeting at the India International Center in Delhi. You know that he was a member of the India International Center, and he used their library and he used the network of friendship there to write some of his important books like Enlightenment, East and West. And I was invited to speak at that meeting of friends in Delhi. Probably I will read a few lines from what I presented there. I started my speech with a quotation from the Argentinian writer Borges, from his book El Aleph, in which he speaks about a place where all the places of the world meet without mingling, beheld from every possible angle at once. Uh, I said Guru Gregorios had a vision of the place where all the places of the world meet. His luminous mind, ever wakeful, took wings and glided into the puzzle zone of that place. It was no place, utopia for many. Yet it was a place par excellence. Flesh, blood, earth, freedom, daring, spirit, synergy, struggles, silence, turbulence, innocence, smile, compassion, and community. His mortal frame was too weak to transmit to us the splendor of the galaxies that exploded out of that place, beheld from every possible angle at once. For Guru Gregorios, the locus of the vision is the kingdom of God. Presence of God is a presence of the good. Where the good is, there is the kingdom of God. And I quoted him from his last testament. If you allow me, I will read those lines, beautiful lines from his last testament.
Yes, sir, for sure, for sure. Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is what he wrote. I bow before the good wherever it shows, in people of different faiths and religions, in people who claim to believe in no God, in birds and animals, in trees and flowers, in mountains and rivers, in air and sky, in sun and moon, in sculpture and paintings, in music and art, in the smile of the infant, and in the wisdom of the sage, in the blush of dawn and the gorgeous sunset. He becomes very poetic. In that little speech, I tried to summarize his thought world as well as the uh, hmm, orientation of his life in my own words. I used to say in many places that he respected and gave time to four kinds of people. One was the sage or saintly persons. For that, he didn't care for the religion, whether you are a Buddhist or Hindu, Christian or Muslim. No, in Delhi, he had identified some such sages um, when he was working there. So he would give any time, he would give all his energy to be with them, to listen to them, and to have conversation with them. Another group of people was the small children, very small children. And even when he is very, very busy with his travel, writings, and other future responsibilities, if a child goes to him, he would receive that child and he would play with the child for hours and hours. We were all surprised, how he can communicate with little children. I mean, then we remembered what Jesus said. Jesus said, If you all turn and become like children, you will inherit the kingdom of God." And he embraced children. When mothers brought children for blessing, he always took them. And he told his disciples, "You see, be like a child. They are the angels. They are the people who make you enter the kingdom of God." Such things. So he loved children, he loved saintly people, and he loved people who came to him with genuine questions. There was a popular impression that Paulos Gregorios was a temperamental person. He was angry with people, but not really. He was angry with people people who come there with presumptuous notions. People who think that they are somebody in the world. With such people, he may be angry. But if you go there, Uday, if you go to him as a student, and you ask him simple questions but genuine questions, he would spend time for you. I have seen hours and hours being spent like that for the people who are released. In Kerala, when he was here, I see great intellectuals in Kerala. Some of them were communist theoreticians, some from literary circles, and some from academic circles. They all come to him and he gives them time. And lastly, uh, I have seen him giving a compassionate uh, attitude to people who are mentally ill, people who are confused and not so well according to our standards of sanity. He would be deeply compassionate to them. So I always say that these are the four types of people he always loved and he gave his time for them. Um, I was always surprised, inspired by this man who worked very hard. Well, he was intellectually gifted, exceptionally gifted. He could understand not only theology but nuclear science or mathematics or some of the new developments in biotechnology. I mean, whatever discipline comes to him, he would take time to understand. More than reading books, he would go and talk to the real people, people who have, for example, if he finds someone in America, finds someone who had a Nobel Prize, and then he would go and talk to him. He had that confidence in him to be able to talk to anyone on his topic. He was moderating a great conference at the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in 1979, where the theme was faith, science, and the future. And I was there as a student at that time. I saw that there were several Nobel laureates in that meeting, scientists in that meeting, and great philosophers, theologians, etc. He moderated that meeting for 1 week. So the amazing gift of understanding and articulation. And many people were jealous of, I mean, tell you literally, many Western people were jealous of him. And many were also admirers of Paulos Gregorios. So he was invited to Soviet Union to chair the roundtable discussions on nuclear disarmament, on international peace, etc. So all around the world, he was sought after for such things. He is a man of peace. I would say he was a very humble man, but there are people still around who thought that he was a very haughty man. Yes, he was. He showed some sort of apparent arrogance, especially with the Western systems. For the past 500 years, the colonial system and the sort of superiority many Western people felt that they were intellectually, culturally, as superior to the rest of the world, and he fought that. So there he could be a bit impatient and restless, but with people who are really saintly, he is very quiet, and he can be attuned to good music, good art, and the people in the Adivasi traditions, the tribal traditions, he has good friends, and he could really identify himself with such people. So that was the personality of Mar Gregorios, as I knew.
Yes. Talking on this book also, as you show this book,
Yes, yes,
there are many articles that His Grace Gregorius wrote on enlightenment.
yes,
According
yes.
to you, how do you see his idea of enlightenment? And also, if you could tell what was his idea of enlightenment? Yeah.
Um, mhm. I think when he wrote his book Enlightenment East and West, and later that book was developed into another book, A Light Too Bright, Enlightenment from a different perspective. I think he studied the philosophical, cultural uh, streams of Western Europe until the 18th century, when they had this great Enlightenment movement, particularly beginning with Immanuel Kant. He studied their philosophies, and of course, like anybody else, he also understood that Enlightenment philosophy was rooted in human reason, human rationality, and that developed into secularization and all kinds of non-religious movements in the Western world, where they completely questioned the existence of God, and they had no reference to any transcendent values. They became very materialistic. This space and time, our economy, our political system, and the human ability to manage all this became very much man-centered. Even I would say man-centered, because even women were in a way brushed aside in that great Enlightenment movement. That was an intellectual movement. It produced a lot of good things, of course, but very too rationalistic and too much, in a way, looking down on the transcendent dimension of humanity. So he criticized it. He wrote very well about the unreason of reason, but he proposed something as an alternative. He said the Asian Enlightenment, beginning with the Buddha, that was a great, and he studied Buddhist philosophers like the Madhyamika philosophers like Nagarjuna, Dharmakirti, and all those people very well. The present Dalai Lama was a very good friend of Paulos Gregorios. I still remember them exchanging their friendly feelings and even jokes. They were very good friends. So he came into contact with some of the best Buddhist philosophers and also the Jain tradition, the Sikh tradition. Delhi gave him a lot of possibilities for conducting other religions. And he was also very well known to Marxist intellectuals, like in Kerala, EMS Namboodiripad, and several others. Recently, I was in Delhi. Then I met Prakash Karat and um, some others. They were also much younger at that time, and they knew Paulos Gregorios very well and admired him. At the Jawaharlal Nehru University, there are many students and professors who came to him for advice and for classes, etc. So this was an important thing in his life, that he opened up his own faith tradition. He never thought that he was a strong believer in God. He was a Christian. For him, the incarnation of God in Jesus Christ was central, was a basic thing for his thought process. But it was not a sort of communal or exclusively uh, sort of fundamentalist Christianity, not at all. He opened up his faith uh, in great hospitality, openness to the world. I think he has also written uh, something on this. Maybe one sentence I would read from his last testament. He said in his last testament, "Let us commit ourselves on behalf of humanity to turn the course of its development from evil to good, from destruction to reconstruction, from ugliness to beauty, from falsehood to truth, and from bondage to freedom, from gloom to hope, from boredom to joy. Let us do it together." So that was the role of religion for him. All religions should come together to uphold one humanity, to create a truly joyful community life in our world.
Yes, sir. This is the centenary of His Grace Paulos Gregorios. He completes 100 years, the years of contribution towards humanity and the work for the betterment of humanity. How important and crucial do you find that his work to be continued by the people who have the same ideals and the disciples of his?
Yes, I think in most of his writings, Paulos Gregorio spoke about the future. He was very much concerned about the future of humanity, the future of the world, Towards the end of his life, he was also concerned about the ecological health of our planet. Um, so, for him, uh, maybe people would say it is rather utopian 21st century. He didn't see the 21st century, but towards the end of the 20th century, he already had signs of communalism and the fragmentation of the human community in the name of religion or ideology or race or language. So I think he always wanted to transcend those divisions. He would definitely promote a great diversity, and he enjoyed the diversity, but at the same time, he said one human body, one humanity is very important. So I mentioned his holistic approach, his interdisciplinary approach. So when he deals with any topic, he would draw upon the wisdom from different disciplines. So, I mean, he has the ability, he has a confidence, of course, to deal with those things. Not everybody can do that. So here is a man, I would say, uh, committed to the created reality as a gift, God's gift for humanity. So we should reciprocate that gift by caring for the world, by entering into a sort of reconciled unity, and by promoting the health not only of individuals but of community also. He wrote a book on holistic healing. He believed, he used that word very much, not simply for the body and mind, but also for the society as a whole. Healing, because we are being divided, fragmented, and a lot of hostility and bitterness, ill will are being promoted by many leaders, in whether in religions or in politics. So he wouldn't go along with that.
Yes, sir. Such a wonderful conversation today we had. We would end this up with a question that I want to ask you, and that would a conclusion to our conversation. Being a distinguished teacher of theology, a distinguished, I would say, professor of theology, a scholar, thinker, what key experiences do you feel that you learn from your life in Dr. Paulos Marigorios? And we would end up by this, yes.
Mhm. Yes, as I told you, he was my mentor and my guru. He still is, because I had seen him dedicating his life to the cause of peace and unity, to the cause of human welfare, irrespective of religion or ideology, to the cause of initiating humanity into a new realm, to the transcendent dimension, away from the complete materialistic physical concern, the great values of transcendence. These are the things which remain with me as as a legacy of Paulos Gregorios. I am, of course, I am incompetent. I am unable to practice many of these things, but still they are very inspiring and a source of inspiration for me.
Such a wonderful conversation, sir. It was not my luck that I could have a conversation with His Grace Dr. Paulos Marigorios, but today I talked with his one of his disciples and a great personality of our time, Dr. Father K.M. George. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation, thought provoking conversation. and we could understand a lot of things about your life and the influences of Dr. Paulos Marigolios on your life. Thank you so much once again, Father.
Yes, thank you, Uday. I must appreciate deeply what you have done. And Paulos Gregorios would have loved you for your daring and for your initiative in dealing with such wide topics. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Father. Thank you so much once again. I would really, I had a lot great idea now about Dr. Paulos Marigorios, his complex ideals, his theory and philosophy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Hope hope you like the conversation, sir.
Yes, very much, very much. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate your school, your principal, and your teachers for encouraging you, for giving you freedom and space for such initiatives. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. Shall I? Okay.